Japan just put stealth fighters on warships for the first time in 80 years. It's a strategic earthquake. The Maritime Self-Defense Force commissioned its first F-35B Squadron 3 months ago, and China's military planners immediately understood what changed. Japan can now project fifth-generation air power from anywhere in the Pacific without needing runways. Here's why that matters. The Izumo-class carriers weren't designed as attack platforms. They were helicopter destroyers built under post-war constitutional constraints. But after a $900 million conversion and the arrival of 42 F-35Bs, Japan now operates what are functionally light aircraft carriers capable of operating 200 miles beyond their coastline. That range covers the Senkaku Islands, Taiwan's northern approaches, being in critical sea lanes China needs for 90% of its energy imports. So can a dozen stealth jets on converted helicopter carriers actually shift the balance in the Pacific? Let's break down what Japan just activated and why Beijing is watching every deployment. For decades, Japan's air defense operated on one assumption: threats would come to them, and they'd respond from land bases. Fighters scrambled from Naha, Misawa, or Hayakuri. That worked when the primary concern was Cold War bombers or occasional intrusions. It doesn't work when your adversary operates carrier battle groups, has occupied disputed islands with military infrastructure, and fields over 2,000 combat aircraft. China's Eastern Theater Command alone can generate 500 sorties per day from bases within 300 miles of the Senkaku Islands. Japan's nearest airbase at Naha is 250 miles away. Response time matters when your adversary can establish air superiority in under an hour. And here's the real constraint. Every Japanese F-15 or F-2 that scrambles from Okinawa burns fuel getting to the fight. By the time they arrive, they have maybe 20 minutes of combat patrol before they need to turn back. That math doesn't win battles. It barely holds ground. Can Japan's new F-35B carrier capability actually counter China's numerical and geographic advantages in the East China Sea? Or is this too little, too late against an adversary that already dominates the first island chain? Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force now operates 2 Izumo-class carriers, JS Izumo and JS Kaga. Both underwent modifications between 2020 and 2024, reinforced flight decks, upgraded fuel systems, ski jump ramps deleted in favor of rolling vertical launches. Each ship displaces 27,000 tons fully loaded, can carry 12 F-35Bs in a combat loadout, and cruises at 30 knots. They're not Ford-class supercarriers, but they're not trying to be. The F-35B brings something no other aircraft in Japan's inventory has: vertical landing capability and stealth. That means it can operate from the Izumo's 800-foot deck without catapults or arrestor cables. It also means Chinese radar systems designed to track fourth-generation fighters suddenly face a target with a radar cross-section the size of a golf ball. China's response tells you everything about how seriously they're taking this. Within weeks of Japan's F-35B Squadron activation, the People's Liberation Army Navy deployed an additional Type 055 destroyer to the East China Sea and increased surveillance flights near the Senkakus by 40%. That's not posturing. That's a direct counter to a capability they didn't have to plan for 6 months ago. But here's where it gets interesting. Japan isn't just adding fighters to ships. They're fundamentally changing how they defend their southern territories. And in doing so, they're creating a model other nations are watching closely. Here's what most people miss about the Izumo class. These ships were never supposed to carry fixed-wing aircraft. Japan's post-World War II constitution renounces offensive military capability, and for 7 decades, that meant no aircraft carriers. The legal workaround? Let's call them helicopter destroyers and limit them to anti-submarine warfare and disaster relief. That worked until China started building islands in the South China Sea and declared an air defense identification zone over the East China Sea in 2013. Suddenly, Japan's self-defense forces faced a problem. How do you maintain defensive capability when the threat keeps moving farther from your bases? The answer came in 2018, when Japan's National Defense Program guidelines quietly approved multi-purpose operation destroyer modification. That's bureaucratic language for turning the Izumo into a light carrier. The conversion took 2 years per ship. Engineers reinforced the deck with heat-resistant coating to handle the F-35B's 40,000 pounds of exhaust thrust. They reconfigured the hangar bays to accommodate wider aircraft. They installed new fuel systems rated for the F-35's JP-8 requirements. The cost? Roughly $900 million per ship, about 1/10 of what the U.S. spent on the USS Gerald R. Ford. But the real breakthrough wasn't engineering, it was legal. Japan's cabinet reinterpreted Article 9 of its constitution to allow proactive defense operations, including force projection beyond immediate territorial waters. That reinterpretation, passed in 2024, gave the Maritime Self-Defense Force authorization to deploy F-35Bs anywhere in the Pacific where Japanese interests are threatened. So now you have stealth fighters on mobile platforms operating under a doctrine that allows first response capability. What they did next is even more surprising. Before we move to the next section of the story, drop your prediction. Can 12 F-35Bs on a carrier match China's land-based air superiority advantage near the Senkakus? The Freedom Decree of 35B isn't just a fighter that can land vertically, it's a sensor node that rewrites how naval battles work. Each aircraft carries the AN/APG-81A ESA radar, capable of tracking 23 targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 100 miles. But here's the kicker. Those 12 F-35s on the Izumo don't operate as individual aircraft. They operate as a networked sensor grid. Through the multifunction advanced data link, every F-35B shares targeting data in real time with every other aircraft, surface ship, and compatible ground station within 300 miles. That means a single F-35B detecting a Chinese J-20 stealth fighter instantly feeds that track to 11 other F-35Bs, the Izumo's Aegis Combat System, and land-based Patriot batteries on Okinawa. China's PLA Navy doesn't have an equivalent system operational yet. Their J-15 carrier fighters use Link 16 compatible systems, but they're not integrated at the platform level the way F-35s are. That creates a 3 to 5 second targeting lag in contested airspace, and in modern air combat, 3 seconds is the difference between firing first and evading missiles. Now layer in weapons capability. Each F-35B carries 4 AIM-120D air-to-air missiles internally, maintaining stealth profile. The AIM-120D has a range of 100 miles and features two-way data link, meaning the pilot can update the missile's target mid-flight. Against non-stealthy targets like the J-15 or J-16, that's a first look, first shot advantage. For maritime strike, the F-35B carries 2 AGM-158CLRASM anti-ship missiles externally, at the cost of increased radar signature. Each LRASM has a 200-mile range and uses AI-driven targeting to autonomously select high-value ships. In a Taiwan Strait scenario, that means F-35Bs operating from the Izumo 250 miles east of Taiwan could strike Chinese amphibious assault groups without entering surface-to-air missile range. But there's one problem nobody's talking about: magazine depth. The Izumo can only carry 48 total missiles across its air wing. Once those are expended, the carrier becomes a liability rather than an asset. That's not a design flaw, it's the inherent trade-off of light carrier operations. So, does that limit actually matter in real combat? In September 2025, the Maritime Self-Defense Force conducted Operation Resilient Shield, a 5-day exercise simulating defense of the Nansei Islands against amphibious assault. When the Izumo deployed with 8 F-35s, 4 escort destroyers, and 2 fast combat support ships. The scenario: Chinese forces establish air superiority over the Senkakus and begin landing operations. Japan's mission: deny access and prevent reinforcement. Here's what happened. The Izumo positioned itself 180 miles northeast of the Senkakus, just outside the effective range of China's HQ-9 surface-to-air missiles deployed on artificial islands. F-35Bs launched in pairs, maintaining continuous 4-aircraft combat air patrol over the islands for 72 hours. Land-based F-35 A's from Misawa provided backup, but the carrier-based aircraft logged 90% of intercept missions. The exercise revealed 3 critical insights. First, the F-35B's 900-mile combat radius meant it could patrol the Senkakus and return to the Izumo with fuel reserves, solving the endurance problem that plagued land-based fighters. Second, the networked sensor grid detected 34 simulated J-16 intrusions, an average of 40 seconds before land-based radar systems. Third, and most important, the Izumo's mobility meant Chinese forces couldn't pre-target its position the way they could with static air bases. That last point is what keeps PLA planners up at night. You can crater a runway at Naha with DF-21 ballistic missiles. You can't hit a carrier that moves 700 miles every 24 hours and operates under strict emissions control. The analysts from RAND Corporation, who observed the exercise, called it the most significant shift in Western Pacific force projection since Japan acquired Aegis destroyers in 1993. But Resilient Shield also exposed limitations. The Izumo required 3 underway replenishments over 5 days: jet fuel, ordnance, and provisions. That logistics tail makes the carrier vulnerable and dependent on sea lane security. If China can interdict supply ships, the carrier becomes a short-term asset. What's your take? Is the Izumo's dependence on constant resupply a fatal flaw, or just standard carrier operations? Comment below. Beijing didn't wait to respond. Within 90 days of Japan's first F-35B Squadron activation, China's Eastern Theater Command implemented 3 direct countermeasures, and they're not subtle. First, they deployed 2 additional Type 052D destroyers to the Donghai Fleet, specifically tasked with tracking Japanese carrier movements. These ships carry the HHQ-9B surface-to-air missile with a range of 155 miles, enough to threaten F-35Bs on combat air patrol if the destroyers can close within 200 miles of the Izumo. They've also increased maritime patrol aircraft sorties by 60%, using KJ-500 airborne early warning aircraft to maintain constant surveillance of the Ryukyu Islands chain. Second, China accelerated deployment of over-the-horizon radar systems along its eastern coast. These low-frequency radars can't generate targeting quality tracks on stealth aircraft, but they can detect anomalies in the electromagnetic spectrum, essentially finding the hole where a stealth fighter should be. That won't give them a missile lock, but it tells them where to concentrate conventional radar and electronic warfare assets. Third, and most significant, the PLA Navy increased its own carrier operations in the Philippine Sea. The Shandong Carrier Strike Group conducted 3 transits through the Miyako Strait in 4 months, a 200% increase over previous years. That's not a coincidence. China's signaling that if Japan operates carriers near contested waters, they'll do the same near Japanese waters. Here's the part that kept Western naval planners engaged. China's also developing the J-35 carrier-based stealth fighter, expected to achieve initial operational capability by late 2026. If that timeline holds, the sensor and stealth advantage Japan currently holds disappears within 18 months. Then the window where F-35Bs dominate contested airspace in the Western Pacific is narrower than most analysts publicly acknowledge. So we're watching a real-time arms race, and the next move might not come from Tokyo or Beijing, it might come from Taipei. So can Japan's new F-35B carrier capability actually counter China's advantages in the East China Sea? The answer is yes, but only as part of a layered defense system, not as a standalone silver bullet. The Izumo and Kaga provide something Japan desperately needed: mobile forward air power that can respond to threats in the southern Nansei Islands without burning half its fuel just getting there. That's a game changer for defending the Senkakus and supporting Taiwan contingencies. But these are light carriers with limited magazine depth and heavy logistics requirements. And they create problems for China, not invincibility for Japan. Here's what matters going forward. First, Japan just proved that medium powers can deploy credible carrier capability without building supercarriers. And South Korea, Turkey, and Australia are all watching that model closely. Second, the F-35B's sensor fusion advantage is temporary. China's J-35 deployment will level that playing field by 2027. Third, the real test isn't whether the Izumo can operate near contested waters. It's whether Japan can protect the supply chain that keeps it operating. By 2030, Japan plans to have 42 F-35Bs operational across both carriers. China will have 3 carriers, potentially 4. The question now isn't whether carrier aviation returns to the Western Pacific. It's already here. The question is whether Japan can sustain operations long enough to matter in a 30-day conflict over Taiwan. Now it's your turn. You're running the war game. Japan's Izumo Group versus China's Shandong Group in the East China Sea. What are your top 3 factors that decide the winner? Comment below. The best strategic breakdowns will get pinned. The arms race just entered a new phase, and your prediction might be closer to reality than you think.